Welcome to another edition of Blind Man's Grub. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make my grandma's Waldorf salad. Basically, your ingredients you need: whipped cream, walnuts, delicious apples, and celery. Depending on how big of a batch you're going to make will decide how much of these you need. I'm going to be using 3 delicious apples, which those are those big red apples. So I'm going to need at least a pint of whipped cream. I also happen to love whipped cream. That's another reason. And probably 4 or 5 stalks of celery. And 2 of these little bags of walnut chips. Other things we're going to need: you need a mixer, a bowl to house the chopped apples and celery, a butcher knife, apple core / peeler, and a cutting board. The apple core and peeler is optional. It'll just make it easier. You're going to need salt, sugar, and one ingredient that might be a little unorthodox: Miracle Whip. We're going to start by opening up this whipped cream and pouring it into the mixing bowl. When you first start, you should start the mixer on a lower level and slowly turn it up to about around level 10. As you'll notice, this has numbers down the side. And be very careful not to over whip. If you whip it too much, you'll end up with butter. We've begun the process. I've got it on low and I'm going to slowly turn it up until we get whipped cream. Then we'll move on to the next step, which it starts to thicken up. We'll start slowly adding sugar to taste. If you see how it's beginning to thicken up, this is what we're looking for. A little bit more, and I'll start adding the sugar. Basically, my sugar thing has a way you can pour it, so I'm going to be eyeballing it. You might want to use a spoon to slowly add the sugar. I tend to like things a bit on the sweeter side. This is what your whipped cream should look like once it's thickened up completely. What we're going to do for now is just let this sit aside. And we're going to move on to cutting up the apples and the celery. The first thing we're going to do to the apple is core it, and then we're going to peel it. Here's our peeled apple. Now I'm going to cut this into small pieces, and then move on to the other apples. There's the first apple cut into pieces. I'll be doing this to the other ones. We're going to go ahead and add a little salt to this. To help it keep from oxidizing. Now keep in mind the amount of salt depends on your taste. And I'm not using kosher salt, I'm just using regular salt. Now that we've completed cutting up all the apples, we're going to move on to the celery. We're going to need probably about 4 to 5 stalks, depending on the size of the stalks. When it comes to celery, the fresher you can get it, the better. You'll notice this one has that really light green color. It means it's fresh. It'll actually be sweeter to the taste. But as celery ages, it'll start turning more of this outer one's color. This one's still okay, because if you look at the bottom, it's still kind of lighter green. But if it gets to be that complete dark green, it will be stringy and hard to eat and not very tasty. Once you finish cutting the celery up, put it in the same bowl with the apples. You don't need any more salt at this point. And now we're going to move on back over here to adding the Miracle Whip. You're going to want to do this very sparingly. I recommend adding it at about a tablespoon, and as much as that tablespoon will hold. And don't even really need to go measuring spoon. I would just use like a simple out of the drawer spoon, like one of these, to do it. And then once you've added it, use this same spoon to stir it in, then then taste it. Once you've stirred it in, you should go ahead and taste it like I recommended. I'd say that came out to what it's supposed to taste like. And now what we're going to do is set this spoon aside, and with a different spoon we're going to stir in the other ingredients. Just finished adding both bags of walnuts. I'm going to go ahead and stir this. And now we're going to grab our bowl containing our celery and apples. And we're just going to tilt it and dump it all in. And then we're just going to start stirring. And here is our finished product, the Waldorf salad. Again, I'll be including the basic recipe in the description. Also, if you happen to look this up on the internet, you'll notice that it calls for raisins as well. My grandma's version of it doesn't include raisins because my grandfather didn't like raisins. And to be quite honest, I'm not too fond of them myself. I don't hate them, but I don't like them either. If you like this edition of Blind Man's Grub, please don't forget to subscribe, and please click the like button down below.